So right now it's December 8th, 12:48 p.m. This chapter I'm about to touch on, it's a chapter that I created before going forward and talking about when Khalid ibn al-Walid went to Syria. So I ain't make up this chapter, but like I said in some of my previous blogs, I was trying to go in chronological order throughout this book. So certain things I kind of skipped because it wasn't relevant during that time period. So right now I'm gonna talk about Al-Bahrain, but what happened during the Ridda Wars, basically when people started rebelling against Islam, So the Ribaya tribe, which was a part of the Al-Bahrain region, pretty much rebelled. Only one did not, according to the end of the chapter concerning Al-Bahrain, which is the Banu Qais tribe. The chief of that tribe during this time period was a guy named Al-Jarrad Mu'alla. And I believe the reason why he didn't rebel is because he was a later convert compared to the rest of the tribes to Islam. He converted sometime in 630, possibly September. Not necessarily another reference, but it's like the date that they provide, they say either September of 630 or October of 631. But that's when he converted, and of course the rest of his tribesmen converted as well, because he was a Christian beforehand and he had questions about this religion, Islam. So he went to Medina and met with Muhammad personally, and then that's when Muhammad answered all of his questions and he was persuaded from that point. But anyway, so Muhammad died in 632, June 8th of that year. Just like the rest of the people, such as in the region of Najd, but Jawf el-Yamama in particular, also Buzaka, another place called An-Nujair, another fort actually called An-Nujair. Just like all of those places, these people here in Al-Bahrain had rebelled as well. So when Muhammad died, another guy who was the chief there had died around the same time as well, which is Al-Mutahhar Sawa Tamim, Al-Tamim. Al-Mutahhar ibn Sawa Al-Tamim. He had died, so another guy by the name of Al-Hutim had rebelled, but he wasn't the only one. It was another guy as well who was a chief, and his name was Al-Mutahhar ibn An-Numan. Now him in particular, he has an interesting story from my point of view because he comes from royalty. He descends from the people of Al-Hira, actually the kingdom of Al-Hira. So before I go forward with him, I like to go into the background of this guy, because based on what I read as far as online, the Wikipedia article, he was trying to reunite, I guess, and reestablish the Al-Hira kingdom. And he was doing it for 8 months until he got captured. The reason why I find that interesting is because according to this book, The Origins of an Islamic State, this rebellion there in Al-Bahrain happened in 632. But see, Muhammad died in June. He died in 632 also, but June 8th of that year. All right, so if this guy was doing this for 8 months, that means either he started to rebel or had the intention of rebelling even prior to the death of Muhammad, or when everything pretty much unfolded and he got captured, it was in the early stages of 633. I get to that in a second. That's why when I do these blogs, there'll be so much to talk about. I don't be knowing where to start sometimes, but I guess I'll go into the background of him because he has an interesting story. Pretty much, he is the son of the last Lakhman king, or I'd rather say the last king of Al-Hira. An interesting thing about that guy, because he had the same exact name, he was not a junior, his name was also Al-Mutahhar ibn An-Numan, was that he was a Christian, but he was a Nestorian Christian, which brings me back to my earlier blog concerning Najran. But I ain't gonna go too much off the subject. So pretty much, that guy, the last king of Al-Hira, he pretty much ruled from 582 to 602 AD. And he was the son of a guy named Al-Mutahhar V. And his mom, her name was Salma. Now, I found that to be interesting too, because her people or her father come from Fadak. Now remember, Fadak is also in Arabia, which is but for the oasis, Fadak itself is north of Mecca. My bad, actually north of Medina. North of Medina, also north of Kabar. So I'm like, nah, wait a minute. No, north of Tain and south of Kabar. I always get Kabar and Tain confused because when I look at different maps, they got them switched up and shit like that. So anyway, she comes from a guy who came from Fadak. He was some type of goldsmith based on what I read. But anyway, that was his mom. So Al-Mudhir ibn an-Numan came into power in 582 AD, but his rule was supported by the Sassanid Empire, all right, a guy named Khosrow II. But his father supposedly, based on one interpretation, had some type of intention to be separated from the Sassanid Empire. In other words, he wanted more independence. So like, I guess like he had a daughter, and Khosrow II wanted to marry his daughter, but he refused, and that supposedly pissed off Khosrow. And so Al-Mudhir ibn an-Numan Sr. ended up getting captured because of this, and this occurred in 602 AD. Now, before I even go on with that portion, there's another interpretation as well, because when Al-Mudhir ibn an-Numan got captured, he eventually got imprisoned, and then he was put to death. And so like 7 years after that, in 609 AD, another guy named Iyas Iyas ibn Qubasa, or actually I think it's Qubasa, he was put as governor of Al-Hira. So in other words, Al-Mudhir ibn an-Numan Sr. was the last king of Al-Hira. All right, so in 609, a major fucking battle had occurred also during that same year, and they call this the Battle of Dikwar. Now this happened somewhere near Al-Kufa. Now you got Al-Hira, you got Al-Kufa, then you got Samawa, and then you got An al-Tamari. And all of these different towns are along the Euphrates River in Iraq. So pretty much that means Dikwar, which is supposed to be some type of watering spot, is north of Al-Hira. Now, another interpretation of why this battle happened is because when he got captured and got imprisoned, Khosrow II wanted his family members as well. Now, it was another guy by the name of Hani bin Qubisha, and he was the head of the Shabani tribe. Now, the Shabani tribe was also an offset of the Banu Bakari ibn the Banu Bakari ibn Wa'il tribe. All right. He wouldn't hand over that guy's family, so that's what sparked this whole battle in 609. That's the interpretation. Another one is that so-called when Al-Mudhir ibn an-Numan Sr. got captured, some of the Ribaya tribes started raiding Persian lands because they always had some type of agreement to keep these Arab tribes from entering Persian lands, which also included the north, going more north past Al-Hira, but also Iran as well. So some of these tribes started raiding these areas. So one of the chiefs, I'm going to assume he was a chief. If he was not, he was some type of important figure. His name was Hani bin Shabani. Khosrow II made some type of contract with him, and the agreement was that that guy would prevent these Arab tribes from raiding Persian lands, but it continued anyway, and he ended up getting arrested, and Khosrow II wanted the hostages of the Banu Bakari ibn Wa'il, but those people refused, and that's what caused this whole battle in 609 AD. Now, I kind of do believe, like even though I read this, and I still consider this portion to be the surface because I just looked at some Wikipedia articles, but I'm kind of believing that the Al-Hira kingdom really did want some type of independence, because in reading about this, they were saying like Khosrow II got defeated in 590 AD by some guy named what was his name? Chabin. Bahrain Chabin, that was his name. And he only like reigned for like a year, and then he got killed in 591. That's when Khosrow II was reinstituted or regained his empire or whatnot. So supposedly Al-Mudhar ibn an-Numan didn't assist him as far as Khosrow. He didn't assist him when that happened. I kind of believe that really did kind of play a part. And then of course, like later on, as far as him not wanting to marry his daughter with him, I think that's a big ass sign of or a statement saying like, we want to be separate from y'all. That's what I think. I guess I'll check into that later when I read that book, Tariq al-Tabari. But anyway, going forward, because I don't want this fucking phone to cut off. He was the last Lackman king. He got killed after being captured in 609. But that battle, as far as Daiquar, that did occur in 609 when Iyas ibn Qubaysah was instituted as the governor there, which is fucking weird because he was supposedly the friend of Al-Mudhar ibn an-Numan. So you had people on the side of the Persians who were Arabs as well, and then you had the Banu Bukhari ibn Wa'il tribe, and then their allies as well. But see, they ended up defeating the Persians, but the Persians still had control of Al-Hira. But the most important factor as far as the senior is concerned, Al-Mudhar ibn an-Numan, like I said, he was the last Lackman king who got killed. So that kind of like dispersed that kingdom in itself, even though the Persians still had control of Al-Hira. How his son made it into Bahrain, I'm not sure. That's a big ass gap. They provide no explanation for it. But that's the background of his son. So fast forwarding, as far as, and I talk about this other guy named Azza Bey on the second part of this, I guess, if the phone cut off. But fast forwarding back into his son, Al-Mudhar ibn an-Numan, he was one of the main leaders of this rebellion. All right, but he was also centered in Al-Hassa. Now, the other guy that I mentioned, Al-Hutin, made his way there, and they pretty much linked up with their forces. So the governor of Al-Bahrain, Al-Aliyah al-Hadrami, that Muhammad had instituted as a vizier there, he found out about this rebellion. Exactly when did he find out? I'm not sure. But again, based on that article itself, Al-Mudhar had this whole little plan going on for like at least 8 months, as far as him trying to reunite and reestablish the kingdom of Al-Hira. So Al-Aliyah al-Hadrami found out about this, and so he marched with his forces there, and it was Arabs and non-Arabs according to what I read. So when they went there, the fort that this rebellious group was at was in Juwantha. Again, that's in Al-Hassa. When they went there, they fought against the people there and they defeated them, but they also took over the fort. So I guess like a